Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rachakodash, the honors some other apostles, the great millstone, peace and salutation to the hopeful members of the elect, the Bechorim, the house of David, that's been preordained, predestined to get delivered in these last times and to be the ruling governing body of the nation of Yasharallah. As you can see on my screen, it says WEF, which stands for World Economic Forum. It says CBDC's central bank digital currency must be implanted under your skin if you want to participate in society. And we starting with the apostle elders of GMS, the prophets, the men of the Lord. We have been telling you, all right. We have been telling the masses that Esau Edom, the elites, particularly of Esau Edom, the international banking families, they were going to do this because it's in the scriptures, it's prophecy. All right. Revelation 13 chapter, which I'm going to get actually. Salaki, let me get my scriptures. I'll get it real quick. I'm going to read some of this article. But we told you, all right? So the whole thing is already set up, man. This whole linking of the digital currency and digital ID is going to be linked to that chip. All right, Revelation 13, verse 16. All right, and it says, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, everyone, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. That word mark in the Greek is charagma, engraven idol, an awl, which this will be like a digital awl. You go into the root word, charax, the needle, palicide, the syringe, the needle. The latter root word is graphos, your database, your writings, information. That's where the whole digital ID is coming into play. All right. And it says, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. They just said what? You have to get this if you want to participate in society, their society. All right. Which Esau will, chip masses of people. At the same time, people dying as well, masses of people dying, but it won't come to fruition because Yahushua is going to destroy all of that. All right when this man's about to fill his belly, the Lord's going to return, man, and usher in his kingdom, a righteous kingdom. All right, and we're looking for that day. Job chapter 5, verse 12. That's crazy because the page number is 444. And we want mercy. We need mercy. And the Lord's going to give his elect mercy. And he's going to protect them from the hour of temptation. When Esau comes down with great wrath, pushing that ship. Depopulation as well. All right. He's going to put the spirit on us to not take it. But it says he disappointed the devices of the crafty. He talking about Yahushai. All right. Yahushai disappointed the devices of the crafty. Of Esau Edom, his imagination, his plans, his agenda. He's not going to fulfill his agenda so that their hands cannot perform the enterprise, right? They're NWO. You see, it says the WEF has declared that all citizens must be implanted with a CBD microchip in the very near future in order to be able to fully participate in society and do basic things such as purchase food and water. See, they're already putting it out there, man. And when they put it out there, sooner or later, it's going to come to fruition. According to Professor Richard Werner, in the very near future, citizens will need to use the latest technology, such as a CBDC chip implant, in order to access their bank accounts. Professor Richard A. Werner is an economist and professor of banking and finance. He is known as the proponent of a new post-crisis monetary policy he called quantitative easing, which he proposed in Japan in 1995 as chief economist of a British investment bank. He has also worked as a researcher at the University of Oxford, the Bank of Japan, the Development Bank of Japan, and the Asian Development Bank. He is involved in supporting the establishment of not-for-profit community banks through an initiative called Local First, CIC, ExposedNews.com reports at the Amsterdam Science Summit 2022, Professor Werner gave a lecture on central bank digital currency CBDCs and the 2030 agenda. At the sidelines of this year's Amsterdam Science Summit, he spoke to Iver Cummins about CBDCs and how high inflation has been orchestrated by central banks to further their agenda. Yeah, I can see this guy, you know, being deleted real soon, if you catch my drift. All right. And they'll make it look like he just mysteriously died in an accident, or a hit out on him. Like, what's that guy's name? The creator of Cash App, Bob Lee, I think. That got supposedly murdered in or killed in which really was murder in San Francisco. It says there are two aspects of quantitative easing monetary policies that Professor Werner proposed. Quantitative easing 1 and quantitative easing 2. All right. Quantitative 1 or easing 1 is for the central bank to step in and purchase the non-performing assets in the banking system. The central bank buys up non-performing assets at face value and the problem is solved. Banks have a strong balance sheet, but that won't be enough to get banks to increase credit. So Professor Werner proposed quantitative easing 2, which allows the central bank to force the banks to create more money and push it into the economy. This will be accomplished with central banks buying assets, for example, property from the non-bank sectors. The money the non-bank sectors receive from the sale of the property would then be deposited into the seller's bank account. When an economy is experiencing deflation, that's how central banks can push money into the economy directly, Professor Werner explained. All right. QE1 was followed by Japan in the 1980s, but the USA disallowed Japan, subsequently using QE2, and then out of the blue, at the wrong time, QE2 was adopted by the US Federal Reserve and other central banks in March 2020. The intention of adopting QE2 at that time was to cause high inflation. Why? To move economies into a CBD system, right? They're crashing their own system to bring in a new system. You have to think of CBDCs as a control system or a permit system, not a currency, Professor Werner explained. Yeah, it's a control system. It says it's a conditional currency based on you actually getting that permit. Now, if you happen to be some kind of critic of government or policy or a critic of central banks, this could be difficult. Or if you dare to step out of the 15-minute zone, which they're building those as well, maybe you'll find that, oh, my CBDC is not working. Of course, there are things we've seen already in China, right, with their whole social credit system. All right. There's plenty of videos where somebody tries to use a ticket to use it to buy a ticket and it doesn't work because his social credit scores are low, right? You jaywalk and they, like in China, you jaywalk, for example, you're locked out of your bank for 24 hours. It says, and effectively, there's no real right to appeal. With very few people controlling the very many, the controllers will use computers and algorithms to run the system. If you appeal the blocking of CBDCs, you'll be dealing with automated responses. So I want to see how long this is. Okay. I'll read one more. All right. I might finish up part 2, maybe bring out some more articles. All right. But let me just finish this up. Professor Werner explained that the central planners, as he calls them, orchestrate inflation to cover up changes to banking systems. For example, in the 1970s, high inflation was orchestrated to cover up the move of the gold-backed US dollar to the petrodollar, right? They took out the gold, because that's what the Federal Reserve, the dollar, was backed by. All right. So they're doing the same thing, okay? But they're gonna totally take away the dollar completely, the Federal Reserve. All right, everything's going digital, and they're doing it in gradualism, okay? Because they can't do it all at once. They're conditioning the minds of these people, all right? But again, like I just said, it says, Professor Warner explained that the central planners, as he calls them, orchestrate inflation to cover up changes to banking systems. So they're trying to crash their own system to make it look like, oh, look, we need to bring in a new system, all right? You see, and this is all conditioning. That's why Bitcoin and all that was created, to condition the minds of these people to go digital. All right, online banking, all of that, man, all that was to condition the minds of these people. So we're moving closer into a digital world. I mean, we're already in a digital world, but digital ID, digital currency, all that is about to be set in stone real soon. It says, in the high inflation we experienced in 2021 and 2022, and those years since 2020 have been the setup of the digital ID and digital currency, has been orchestrated to cover up the move from the petrodollar to CBDCs, right? I think Saudi Arabia even just switched to the yuan, all right? But look at China. They're about to go into, digital currency, all right? The whole world, because the elites control all these different countries, the international banking families. All right. Let me see how long it is. Actually, let's keep going. It says, in March 2020, the Federal Reserve and other key central banks adopted QE2, a recommendation for deflation or a shrinking economy. In March 2020, economies weren't shrinking, but the Federal Reserve adopted QE2 and bought up assets from non-banks, forcing banks to create credit. It was very clear it wasn't going to create inflation. This was not an error in judgment. It was intentional. Professor Warner explained it's a very specific policy that is very rarely taken. Proof that this was a deliberate action, Professor Werner said, was that just before, COVID, I'll just say it, in August 2019, there was a conference in Jackson Hole of the annual Central Bankers Conference, but invited BlackRock, the big asset manager. And BlackRock made a proposal. They said there will be another crisis, but this time we should create inflation. They never explained why. They just said we mustn't create inflation. These devils, man. And here's how we're going to do it. And they cited my proposal without mentioning my name, of course. And there's one more factor, Professor Warner said. The Federal Reserve hired BlackRock in March 2020 to buy assets. Quantitative easing was for a deflationary situation, but the way they were using it had to cause inflation. There was no doubt, and they knew it because they even said it. All right, so they're the ones that's causing this inflation. All right, it's all orchestrated. So this current inflation is entirely intentional, created by the central bankers, or central banks, by the central planners, the international banking families, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, the Gettys, all right, and the names that you don't hear about, the Edomites. So how are we going to punish them for this? And particularly the house of Amalek, the small hats. Oh, let's give them more powers, to give them unprecedented powers over everything, over life on earth, through central bank digital currencies. That's what these devils want to do. The true reason I think why they wanted this inflation, because that is to cover up essentially the disintegration of the petrodollar and move to the new system, which they want to be CBDC based. At the moment, there's talk about CBDCs being used via phone-based apps. Yes, that is the initial phase, right? But what was already ready around 2015 is the ultimate goal. What they really want, apparently, I was told by a central banker, is CBDC looks like a small grain of rice that they want to put under your skin. Woo! MOTB, which is a view of violation of human dignity. And they realize there is a hurdle to get people to accept this, Professor Warner said. So they're using crisis, disruption, and unemployment to introduce universal basic income, right? To soften the public up to accepting a CBDC chip implanted under their skin. You will get 2,000 euros into your account every month. And that's going to come all over the world, all right, especially here in America. But of course, to run this officially, they'll say we need to use the latest technology, so you need the CBDC chip implant. Ooh, and there it is, man. Call it y'all, Bashma Shai. We almost out this place. All right. So, hey, till next time, hey, Shalom.